Father, please, do not do this.
I will care for you, I promise. You will want for nothing.
Anne Stanhope stepped down from her father's carriage, tore her hand from his grasp, and said, "I have signed no marriage settlement, and I will not sign one. You are 27, you have refused 3 respectable men, and now you mean to ruin us for the pleasure of being difficult," Mr. Stanhope hissed. "Unmarriageable. Utterly unmarriageable." Then he saw the muddy man holding a lantern beneath the stone gatehouse arch, seized Anne's hand, and thrust it into the stranger's palm. Then perhaps the groundsman will take what no gentleman wants. Anne's heel slid on the wet gravel. The stranger caught her fingers only long enough to steady her. His palm was rough, cold mud drying across it. Then she drew back, and his hand opened. "Do not touch her again," he said to Mr. Stanhope. Her father stared. "You forget your place." "No. I know precisely where I am." The stranger glanced at the iron gates behind him. "And Miss Stanhope has just said she will not go with you." The gatekeeper hurried from the lodge and stopped short. "Your Grace, shall I call men from the stable?" Anne stared. The Duke of Verewood stood in mud with a lantern. "That explains the gate," she said. "It does not entirely explain this coat. The glass-house drains were blocked." He looked at Anne. "Do you wish to leave in that carriage? No. Then you will not." He turned to the coachman. "Miss Stanhope's trunk on the gravel. Mr. Stanhope may go." Her father began. "You cannot keep." "I am keeping no one." The trunk came down with a thud. The carriage rolled away, and the iron gates shut behind it. "You may remain at Verewood for 30 days, the Duke said. "A widowed gentlewoman will stay with you. Choose your room, use my carriage, and leave whenever you please. Your father enters only if you invite him. And I may work." She lifted the satchel she had saved from the carriage. Seed papers crackled inside. "1 bench in your glasshouse. I mean to sell seed this spring, not sit grateful in a drawing-room." His gaze went to the satchel, then back to her. "1 bench. South Bay. Do not touch the north flues. Agreed." The next morning, Anne found him in the glasshouse, ordering a row of tender trays beneath a rattling pane. "If you put them there," she said, holding her hand under the draught, "they will be dead by Thursday." He tested the cold air himself, looked once at the seedlings, and changed the order before 3 gardeners could pretend not to have heard her. "Leave the trays where they are," he said. "Repair the frame first." Then he looked at Anne. You may have the centre bench as well." That was the first thing at Verewood that surprised her more than his title. Frederick, Duke of Verewood, preferred a useful correction to a beautiful mistake. By the end of Anne's first week, the South Bay no longer looked abandoned. She learned the widowed gentlewoman's name was Jane Wadham, and that Jane possessed a dry expression, a sound knowledge of preserves, and no objection to sitting in a glasshouse with her sleeves pinned neatly back. 2 older women from the estate village came for several mornings to help sort paper twists and wash terracotta pots. Anne noticed that one widow's wrist tired before noon and the other would miss luncheon rather than slow the work. She moved the water nearer the centre trough and made dinner a fixed interruption. "We are preserving efficiency," Anne said. "We are preserving ourselves from eating the labels," Jane replied. Frederick objected to nothing except unsafe boards, blocked passages, and Anne's habit of putting objects where he had just made a straight line. "Your centre bench is advancing," he observed one morning. "It is a bench, not an army. It has crossed 6 inches into the passage. That is because your passage was wide enough to parade cavalry through it. It was wide enough to carry a watering can without baptizing 3 people. Anne looked at Mrs. Allen's damp cuff, then at the can in her own hand. He had a point which was irritating, chiefly because he knew it. 4 inches back, she conceded. 6. 5, and I will stop calling it a parade ground. Done. A few days later, a warped lower frame had to be lifted before the rotted board beneath it could be replaced. Frederick marked the unsafe strip with 2 stools and told the gardeners no one was to cross between them. Anne wanted the trays kept warm while the work was done, so she sorted them by hardiness and moved only the tender ones to the brick wall. When one gardener started toward the closed strip with a tray in both hands, Frederick's stop cracked through the glass house. The man halted at once. Anne saw the loose board tilt under its own weight and swallowed her objection. "For once, your grace, your appetite for rules has saved a tray of marjoram and perhaps a gardener's ankle. For once I am preserving your humility." He did more than stand over the work. After assigning the men and checking the exit twice, he shed his coat and braced the frame with the carpenter catching his knuckles on rough wood without calling another man to take his place. A duke doing such work was odd enough for servants to notice. It was the sort of eccentricity that made neighboring families lift their brows over dinner, and Frederick seemed perfectly content to give them the exercise. He appeared to regard rank as a reason to know what had been neglected, not a reason to stay clean. Her first order arrived at the end of that week. 12 small packets of kitchen herbs requested by a cook near the cathedral close. Anne read the note twice, then held it up. "Ladies, we are commercial criminals now." Jane peered over her spectacles. "For selling parsley today, parsley. Tomorrow, perhaps mint without a license." The women laughed, and the potting room became noisy with folding paper and cutting twine. Anne's first instinct was to prepare 24. If 12 sold, surely more would. When the floor beneath her felt uncertain, she had always built herself another day's work. Frederick came in while she was counting empty papers. "How many are ordered?" 12. "How many are you preparing?" 24. "Why optimism? Inventory without a purchaser is not optimism. It is preparedness. It is 24 opportunities to spill time on my floor." She narrowed her eyes. "You object to enterprise. I object to making twice the work before the first dozen proves anyone will pay." Anne opened her mouth, then shut it. "Very well," Anne said. 12. "But you must fold one." Frederick looked at the small square of paper as if it were a hostile dispatch. "Your Grace," Jane said solemnly, "the honor of Verewood appears to depend upon it." His packet came out lopsided with one corner sticking up like a small, rebellious ear. Anne held it between finger and thumb. "I withdraw every criticism I have made of your straight lines. Clearly paper defeats you. Put the herbs in it. It will not stand. Then it has character." The packet went with the other 11. 2 days later, the cook sent payment and asked for more. Anne folded the coins into her purse. They gave a small metallic chink, and crushed time still clung sharp to her fingertips. They were only a few shillings, but they had come from something she had grown and sold herself. Frederick said nothing sentimental about the money. He merely ordered an unused shelf moved nearer her bench so the finished packets would stay dry, then walked away before she could thank him. That, she discovered, was how he praised things. The second week brought a hard squall out of the west and a crack across one of the old roof panes. The glass did not fall, but the fracture widened with every gust. Rain began to spit through it onto a row of bean trays. Frederick entered from the yard, took one look upward, and ordered the centre bay cleared. "We cannot move every tray to the far house," Anne said. "The tender ones will chill before we finish. No one works beneath cracked glass." "I agree. Give me the 2 safe strips beside it." He looked at the roof, the distance to the partition door, and the workers already reaching for pots. 3 strips, he said. "This middle one stays empty. No exceptions. 3 strips make a bottleneck. Then alter your route." She clapped her hands. "Hardy trays to the left wall. Tender trays under the low staging. Empty pots to Jane. No one steps between his Grace's 2 sacred stools unless you wish to be tried for treason." The work became a rapid relay. Frederick stationed one man at the door, another below the ladder, and took the dangerous side of the frame himself, while the glazier climbed outside under a canvas hood. Anne rotated the trays through the warmer strip, shortening the route, when she saw Mrs. Allen and Mrs. Pritchard meeting head-on with watering cans. "Stop there," Frederick said, once pointing to a stack that narrowed the exit. Anne saw it and moved the pots herself. "Useful interference. Mark the date." "I have a ledger." "Of course you do." By the time the new pane was seated, no tray had been lost, and no one had worked beneath the cracked glass. Anne called that an inconvenient victory for both their methods. At luncheon, Jane spread cold pie, cheese, and tea across a cleared potting bench. Frederick remained because he claimed he needed to inspect the repair. Anne suspected the pie had something to do with it. He ate with one hand, and with the other used the blunt side of his knife to draw lines in spilled soil. "The west frame should be planted at equal intervals," he said. Anne poured tea. "No." He looked up. A complete argument. "The brick wall curves toward the sun. The soil is warmer here." She traced a shallow arc beside his straight line. "If you plant as if the wall were a ruler, the outer seeds will wake 3 days after the inner ones. A straight row is easier to tend. A living row is easier to harvest. A shilling says mine performs better. You are wagering with a guest over beans. You began the dispute." Jane lifted her cup. "I do not believe the estate accounts contain a heading for gaming losses to legumes." "They will," Frederick said. Anne laughed so suddenly that tea trembled in her cup. They planted both rows that afternoon and kept score shamelessly until Friday. On Friday, Anne's curved row had 12 shoots. Frederick's had 7. Frederick stood over the beds, hands behind his back. "The west frame will follow Miss Stanhope's curve." Anne waited for a qualification. "And my aisle width," he added. "There it is. You admitted the aisle was better. I admitted nothing. I expressed a temporary respect for not drowning people with watering cans." He looked toward the workers. "Planting questions go to Miss Stanhope. Access and repairs come to me." The words struck more deeply than praise. He had let her judgment stand where everyone could hear it. By the 4th week, the glasshouse had a rhythm. Seed paper crackled terracotta, scraped over timber, and Jane scolded anyone who forgot luncheon. Anne's orders grew enough that she began asking the steward about the small stone cottage beyond the south kitchen garden, close enough to carry trays by hand. She did not ask Frederick for it. Not yet. The idea needed to belong to her before it belonged to any conversation between them. Then a messenger from town brought the rumor her father had chosen to make useful. Mr. Stanhope, unable to obtain the terms he wanted from his creditor, was telling anyone who would listen that the Duke of Verewood had detained his daughter, ruined her name, and refused to return her. A solicitor had been consulted. There was talk of coming to the estate to demand that Anne be surrendered to her family. Anne learned the rumor had teeth before she learned exactly what Frederick meant to do about it. A note from the cathedral close arrived with an order she had expected to fill. The cook's employer, having heard that Miss Stanhope's situation at Verewood was uncertain, wished to postpone further purchases until her residence was settled. It was only one order, 16 packets. Anne had other customers. Still, she read the polite refusal twice. A name could close a kitchen door as neatly as an iron bolt.
"See that his room is prepared by tonight."
Frederick heard about the rumor an hour earlier. She knew that because by the time she entered the hall the next morning, his fear had already become orders. "Move Miss Stanhope from the south room to the east interior room," he told the housekeeper. "No window facing the road." Anne stopped on the stair. "All letters for Miss Stanhope are to come through my secretary until this matter is settled." Her fingers tightened around the banister. "And the glasshouse is locked at dusk. No one enters after the evening bell." The housekeeper hesitated. "Your Grace today." Anne descended the last steps. Frederick saw her. For a moment neither spoke. Then she smiled, because smiling had carried her through more rooms than truth ever had. How efficient. I have been promoted from unwanted daughter to guarded fern. His face did not soften. Your father is sending people to the estate. I will not have anyone reach you through an unguarded door. I see. She saw too much. Her father choosing the carriage, her father choosing the suitor, her father choosing which letters mattered and which rooms were suitable. Different house, different voice. The same narrowing of doors. But the servants were, and Anne could not bear to become one more difficulty Frederick had to manage in front of them. So she said, "Very well," and made it sound cheerful. That was her mistake. For 2 days she worked as if speed could make the new rules harmless. The early glasshouse bolt made her skip luncheon. 2 customers' letters reached her late. One answer that should have gone out with the noon cart did not leave until the following morning, and by then the order had been placed elsewhere. It was not ruin. It was worse in a smaller way, proof that someone else's caution could reach into the future she was trying to build and alter it without her consent. She accepted another order she should have refused. Then another. If she was useful enough, no one could call her a burden. The thought was old foolish and stronger when she was tired. On the 3rd evening, the bell sounded while 40 packets still lay unfinished. Anne stood too quickly from the low bench. The room tilted. She caught the staging with both hands. A tray slipped from the edge and struck the floor, spilling dark soil across her shoes. Jane was beside her at once. "Sit, I am sitting. You are kneeling. Then I have achieved half the instruction." Jane did not laugh. That frightened Anne more than the dizziness. By the time Frederick came through the potting room door, Anne had lowered herself onto a stool. He took in the spilled tray, her white face, and the untouched plate Jane had found beside the cold hearth. "Send for the physician," he said. "No." He turned to her. Anne opened her mouth for another joke. Nothing came. "I do not need a physician," she said. "I need my hours back. My letters. My room." Her voice shook once, and she let it. "You kept my father beyond the gate, Frederick, and then you began doing his work for him inside it." The silence after that was painful because he did not fill it with excuses. Anne took the delayed order from her apron pocket and put it on the bench between them. "This one went elsewhere because my answer sat in your secretary's basket. I can afford to lose 16 packets now. If you had done the same thing next month, you might have cost me my rent." His eyes went first to the note, then to the early locked glass house door. "All right," he said at last. Anne gave a tired, humorless breath. "That is not a very ducal answer." "No. It is the beginning of a better one." The next morning he gave it before the senior household staff. "The order moving Miss Stanhope to the East Room is withdrawn," Frederick said. "She chooses her room. Her correspondence is to be delivered to her unopened and without delay. The glasshouse hours are Miss Stanhope's decision unless there is an immediate danger from repair work." No explanation followed. No plea that he had meant well. He looked toward Anne, who stood beside Jane at the end of the hall. "I exceeded what was mine to decide," he said. "That will not happen again." Anne did not rush to rescue him from the discomfort of admitting it aloud. "And the order I lost?" she asked. His face tightened. "I cannot restore a customer's choice after the fact." "No. I can make certain no letter of yours passes through my hands again. That is the useful answer." A few servants lowered their eyes to hide smiles. Frederick inclined his head as if she had just set a condition in an estate contract. "See that you test it. I intend to." Trust did not return in a flood. It returned the next afternoon, one small piece at a time. A messenger arrived at the north gate asking whether Anne would receive a communication from her father. Frederick was in the yard when the man came. He could easily have sent him away without troubling her. Instead, a footman came to the glasshouse. His Grace says a man waits at the north gate on Mr. Stanhope's behalf. He asks whether you wish to receive him. Anne looked at the tray in front of her, then at the clock above the potting-room shelf. No, not today. The footman bowed and left. Nothing else happened. No one brought her the message. No one questioned why she had refused it. Frederick did not appear 10 minutes later with an improved decision. The very absence of action warmed her more than she expected. That evening she found him in his study with estate books open before him. He stood when she entered, but did not come around the desk. "The messenger says my father will come himself in the morning," Anne said. Yes. Her usual instinct was at once prepare every answer, arrange every person, prevent every quarrel. She could feel herself reaching for a dozen invisible trays. She stopped. "Keep my father beyond the north gate until breakfast," she said. "No visitors tonight. I am going to eat, and I am going to sleep." Frederick listened to the whole request. Done. That was all. After supper, Anne heard the distant metal of the north gate bolt carried faintly through the cold air. She did not walk down to inspect it.
But the cottage, your work, and your use of the glass house are not the price of an answer to me.
Instead, she returned to the glass house for 5 minutes, not to work, but to take one small twist of spring seeds from her satchel. Frederick had followed only as far as the potting-room door. "I have been asking Jane and your steward about the South Garden cottage," Anne said. "The rent is ordinary. I can manage a quarter in advance, even after losing today's order." His expression changed, but he did not tell her to remain at Verewood House. "You should take it if you want it." "I do." Anne held out the seed twist. "For your experimental bed. Next spring. Provided you do not plant it like infantry." He accepted the packet carefully. His first crooked fold, still a family joke among the gardeners, would have suited his hand better. "I want you near Verewood after the 30 days, he said. The plainness of it made her breath catch. He continued before she could answer. "But the cottage, your work, and your use of the glass house are not the price of an answer to me. They stand whether you want me near you or not." Anne looked at the paper packet between his fingers. A month earlier she might have answered with a joke, and then worked until midnight, rather than examine why the words mattered. Tonight she was too tired for cowardice, disguised as cheer. "I am glad you said that," she said softly. "I am not ready to answer the rest." "Then do not." She smiled. "You are improving. I dislike the tone of your assessment. Good night, Frederick. Good night, Anne." She slept until Jane knocked at 8. Mr. Stanhope's carriage reached the north gate before breakfast. A solicitor seated beside him. Frederick was already there. One gatekeeper stood inside the bars. There were no men posted along the road. Jane walked with Anne as far as the inner path. "Open this gate, Verewood," her father shouted. "I will not discuss my daughter through iron bars." "Then we may not discuss her at all," Frederick said. The solicitor leaned forward. "Your Grace, Miss Stanhope's continued residence under your roof is already the subject of comment in town." "I know," Anne said. "One customer has withdrawn an order because my residence is called uncertain. You need not explain the price of gossip to me." There her father snapped. "Come home before there is nothing left to save." Frederick did not answer for her. "I will speak with you tomorrow morning at 10, Anne said. "You will speak to me now." "No. I have not eaten, and I have work to finish. Return at 10 if you want my final answer," the solicitor murmured to Mr. Stanhope. Her father pointed through the bars. "This is his doing." Anne glanced at Frederick, who had not moved. "No, that is precisely the point." She turned toward the house. His command remained behind her at the gate, instead of closing around her. That afternoon, with Jane at the far potting bench, Anne and Frederick set the next morning's limits. "My father will say you have compromised me. The solicitor will say I have nowhere proper to go." Frederick drew one chalk line across the work table. He has no invitation to enter Verewood. You may pass through the gate in either direction. My staff will not move you for him." He began a second line toward the road. Anne covered it with one finger. "No guards along the road. Very well. I will say I signed no settlement, I will not marry to buy time on his mortgage, and I will not return to his house. Then I will tell him about the cottage." The steward had agreed that morning to the ordinary rent. Anne had paid the first quarter from her reserve and seed money. The tenancy was settled before Frederick knew what answer she might ever give him. "I take possession tomorrow afternoon," she said. "The front chimney smokes in an east wind. There he is, and the back latch sticks. I have hands." He caught himself. "Yes, you do. You may tell me where the ladder is kept." "Nothing further." Agreed. The bargain felt better than reassurance. At 10 the next morning, her father returned with the solicitor. The same iron bars stood between them. The same rough gatehouse smelled of damp stone and lamp oil. Anne remembered her hand being forced into a muddy stranger's palm under that arch, and felt not fear exactly, but the clean edge of memory. This time she put her own hand on the latch of the side wicket. Frederick looked at her once. "I am going outside the gate," she said. He nodded and ordered the gatekeeper to unlock the wicket. Anne stepped through with Jane beside her. Frederick remained on the estate side. He did not follow unless she asked. Mr. Stanhope stared at her as if the sight of her choosing which side of the gate to stand on were an insult in itself. "Anne," he began, "you have had your display. Come home before the county decides you are beyond recovery." "I am not coming home. You have no home. I do now." The solicitor raised a measured hand. "Miss Stanhope, no one disputes that you are of full age, but your circumstances are exposed. A prolonged stay in an unmarried gentleman's house will invite conclusions that no prudent woman would welcome." "I agree," Anne said, "which is why I am leaving Verewood House this afternoon." Her father's face brightened too quickly. Anne almost laughed. "I am not leaving with you. I have taken the South Garden cottage on an ordinary tenancy. The first quarter's rent is paid. I shall continue my seed work and use the glass house by agreement with the estate." Mr. Stanhope looked toward Frederick as though waiting for him to contradict her. Frederick did not. The solicitor's mouth tightened. "And the proposed settlement?" "There is no settlement," Anne said. "I signed nothing. I will not marry your creditor's relation or anyone else to purchase another season for father's mortgage." Her father stepped nearer the bars. "After everything I have done for you." Anne felt the old reflex soothe him, soften the words, make his anger survivable for everyone standing near. She let the reflex pass. "You housed me because I was your daughter. You are afraid of losing the house. I know that. But your fear does not become my signature." For the first time, something besides anger moved across her father's face. Weariness, perhaps, or the knowledge that she had named the part of him he preferred to call duty. Then his mouth hardened again. "You are unmarriageable," he said. "No respectable man will have you after this." There it was again, the word he had used like a price tag when she refused to be sold cheaply enough. This time Anne smiled because the truth was actually funny. "Then respectable men may rest, father. I have finally learned not to arrange my life around their fatigue." Jane coughed behind her just in time to disguise a laugh. Mr. Stanhope turned on Frederick. "And you mean to harbor this rebellion and call yourself honorable?" Frederick's answer was brief. "Your quarrel with me concerns my gate. You are not invited through it. Miss Stanhope may cross it whenever she wishes. My staff will not assist you in moving her against her word. You will regret choosing her over every decent family in the county. I have chosen who enters my estate. Nothing more. No declaration, no claim upon Anne, No offer to solve the mortgage and purchase peace. The solicitor spoke quietly to Mr. Stanhope. A carriage waited. A daughter of 27 had refused to return. A duke would not open his private gate. There was no signature to enforce and no useful spectacle left to create. Her father climbed back into the carriage. As the wheels turned, Anne did not feel triumphant. She felt light and terribly sad and hungry. The combination was so ordinary that she nearly laughed again. She put her hand on the wicket and stepped back onto Verewood land because she chose to. Frederick moved aside to give her room. "The cottage key is with the steward," he said. "Thank you." "The chimney." "Frederick." He stopped. Anne looked at him until the severity in his face broke at one corner. Later he said, "Much better." The South Bay was warm that afternoon. Sunlight lay pale across the workbench, and the repaired panes clicked softly as the temperature changed. Anne packed the last of her seed papers into a basket for the cottage. Frederick stood several feet away, not helping because she had not asked, and visibly finding the experience difficult. It made her fond of him in a way she could no longer pretend was merely gratitude. "My tenancy begins today," she said. "My orders are mine. The glasshouse agreement remains the same." "Yes, even if I send you away, yes. Even if I tell everyone in Somerset that your packet-folding is a disgrace to the peerage." His eyes narrowed. "That may require litigation." She laughed, but did not step toward him. "If I say yes too quickly," Anne said, "I shall wonder whether I merely walked from one man's house into another man's plans." Frederick did not move closer. "I have not yet lived one full day behind a door that is mine." She continued. "Then live behind it," he said. "A week, a month. Courtship is not a summons. And if I discover I prefer my cottage to the idea of being a duchess, then I shall visit the cottage." That pulled a smile from her. "I want to court you," he said, "but shelter work and Verewood's name will not be my argument." Anne looked at the basket between them. "At the gate, my father put my hand in yours, as if one man might transfer me to another. I will not prove him right because your coat is better." "You will not?" Frederick said. "You are the one deciding whether I may call, and you still lost the wager over the beans. There is that." Anne crossed the distance herself. "I chose the cottage before I chose whether you might visit it." Frederick's breath left him slowly. "And you may court me." She laid her hand against the mud-scarred lapel of the work coat he had put on again that morning. "On Tuesdays to begin with." "Tuesdays. With Jane somewhere within shouting distance until the county has exhausted itself. I can survive the county. You are not the one whose orders it cancels." The humor left his face. "No." Anne appreciated that he did not pretend otherwise. "And you may not inspect my front path with a ruler. I cannot make that promise. Then courtship will be difficult. I have survived your planting geometry." "Barely." His hand lifted, then stopped near her cheek. "May I kiss you?" Anne smiled. "Yes." The kiss was brief and warm, and nothing like being rescued. When she stepped back, the glasshouse remained hers to leave. The cottage waited with its smoky chimney and stubborn latch. Her work waited too. Frederick looked slightly less composed than a duke ought to look. Anne decided not to improve him too quickly. 4 months later, spring had turned the fields around Verewood Green. Anne's cottage was small and entirely satisfactory. Seed baskets lined the narrow hall, a drying rack occupied half the kitchen ceiling, and the swept chimney still smoked in an east wind proof. Frederick had not invented the fault merely to interfere. The cathedral household that had withdrawn its winter order had returned in March with a modest request and no mention of scandal. Anne charged the same price as before. She did not lower it for gratitude, raise it for spite, or ask Frederick to notice. Her other orders had grown beyond what she could sensibly fill alone. The old Anne would have accepted every request and worked until candle stubs guttered on the table. On Monday, she refused 3 large commissions. Jane, who had come to drink tea and pretend not to inspect the accounts, read the refusal notes and nodded. Sensible. Do not look so disappointed. I remain capable of folly. I have met the Duke. Anne threw a seed paper at her. Frederick arrived after luncheon with the estate cart for Thursday deliveries. Anne paid the same modest charge as other small tenants, had accepted 1 cart day a week, and had refused his first suggestion of 3. He had complained for exactly 40 seconds. Now he jumped down without his formal coat sleeves turned back and looked toward the small bed beside the cottage wall. You promised me an experimental row. I promised you the opportunity to fail under supervision. He produced a line of twine and 2 wooden stakes. Anne folded her arms. Frederick planted the first stake, stretched the twine, and made a perfect straight line from one end of the bed to the other. She waited. He pressed the second stake into the earth. She waited longer. At last he glanced over. What the oak? He looked up at the branches shading the far end of his immaculate row. The wall curves toward the sun, Anne reminded him. Your last 4 feet will sulk. Seeds do not sulk. Yours do. They have excellent reason. Frederick regarded the straight line with genuine regret. A duke ought to be permitted 1 ceremonial straight row. After the wedding. He went still. Anne had meant to make him suffer a little longer, but his face ruined the plan. She walked across the bed and took the twine from his hand. After the wedding, she repeated quieter. Provided the marriage articles establish a trust for my separate use, including the earnings from my seed business. The cottage remains my working place for as long as I want it, and you accept that I am final authority on the beans. Frederick's hand closed around hers, not because anyone had put it there, but because she had offered it. Your seed earnings, he said, your cottage work, your beans, and 1 ceremonial row. His mouth finally curved. Generous. I am known for it. He kissed her forehead, then bent to pull the first stake from the ground. Anne laughed as he reset the line along the warmer curve. The spade sank into spring soil. Paper seeds crackled in her apron pocket. Behind them, her cottage door stood open because she had opened it, and the road to Verewood lay clear beyond the garden wall. The end.